He gave a homeless man $100 and followed him to see how he spent it. The result is surprising. There are those who feel superior to others because of the money they have in their bank account, the clothes they wear, or the people they associate with. A serious mistake that unfortunately more and more people make in an unconscious society full of comforts. This story is proof that we should treat everyone with humility, regardless of their appearance, their origin, or their wealth. And that even if life smiles on us today, no one can assure us that in time everything will change, and we will be the ones who need the help of others. Josh Paler Lynn was a middle-class man who spent his days working from 8 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon. He was a bachelor, and the truth is that he had been quite lucky in life. His parents gave him a good life without any economic hardship and a good education. His mother was a high school teacher and his father was a carpenter. He never lacked for anything, and yet the older he got, the emptier and unhappier he felt. Josh considered himself a good person, yet there were aspects of his personality that didn't fit that adjective. Perhaps that's why, despite feeling like a good man, he had no friends and no one to call a partner. One of the main problems Josh had, and one that had often cost him an argument with someone else close to him, was the contempt he felt for poor people who lived on the streets or who looked unkempt. For him, all those people who lived sitting among dirty cartons were lazy and undeserving of charity from those with money. If they want money, they should work and earn it with dignity like we all do. They think that by dressing like that, they are going to make me feel sorry for them. Well, no. I work every day to have a good life, not to be obliged to give my money to people who do nothing to change their miserable lives. Besides, I'm sure all the coins they earn throughout the day they spend on smoking or alcoholic beverages, those people are hopeless, were some of the comments Josh used to make when someone brought up the subject. His mother, as a teacher and a rational woman, was very disappointed to hear him tell her that, but there was little she could do to change his mind. "My son, you can't go around saying that. You don't know what has happened to every person living on the street. You can't judge them all equally. Would you want someone to do that to you? Think about it. I'm sure you'd feel very indignant and want to justify yourself. Well, I'm sure they feel the same way every time someone judges them unfairly." His mother reproached him every time she heard Josh complain about the homeless. "How do you know all those people are there because they're unlucky? Maybe they've brought it on themselves by living a bad life with drugs or gambling all their money in a casino," her son suggested, ironically, not willing to change his mind so easily. His mother despaired at how stubborn and cynical her son could be. She hadn't raised him that way, and yet he was the most distrustful and uptight person she knew. Realizing that words were useless, she suggested something completely different to open his eyes. "You know what? You're right. I can't know. But the truth is, neither can you. So I'll tell you what. Take $100 and give it to a homeless person, whichever one you prefer. I don't care. Just walk up to him and drop a $100 bill in his glass, and then follow him to see what he does with the money you give him." Are you out of your mind? I'm not willing to lose $100 for some poor guy to pay for a month's worth of beers. I'm not willing to give them $10. Why would I give them 10 times that much? Josh reproached his mother in disbelief. He was really irritated and didn't understand where his mother was going with all that. "Josh, listen to your mother for once in your life and stop yelling at me. You have $100 and I'm sure it won't you do any harm to lose it. In fact, you have so much money accumulated in your bank account that it should be forbidden. Do as your dear mother asks and give $100 to someone in need. Pick a homeless person and then, unbeknownst to them, follow them around and see what they invested in." How does that sound? After several minutes of discussion, Josh finally relented and agreed to go along with his mother's plan. He didn't agree, and he was completely convinced that his mother would have to swallow her words and agree with him, but he was very curious to see what these people actually did with the money they earned on the street. The next day, Josh Paler Lynn approached a homeless man on the street to give him $100 agreed upon with his mother. It was January, and the country was going through a cold snap with extreme temperatures as low as -10 degrees Celsius. This was making it even worse for many street people, some even dying of hyperthermia and starvation. Arriving at the homeless quarter, he didn't know who to give the money to. In fact, it was the only thing he hadn't thought about. They all looked the same to him, but looking at them closely, he began to realize that this was not the case. He walked past them for a few minutes, hesitating. None of them seemed too special to him, nor too needy, so he decided to do it randomly. Josh put his $100 bill in a small cardboard cup that lay empty and walked away. Before he got far enough, however, he could hear the person he had left to thank him. "Thank you, I will always thank you. Whoever you are a good man," he heard him say loudly as he walked away as fast as he could so that the beggar would not see his face nor be able to identify him if they met again. Hearing him say that, Josh couldn't help but feel good. He had done something good, even if it was only to satisfy his mother's wishes. And that man had wanted to thank him. Not everyone does. However, he was still convinced that hours later, all that gratitude would be tarnished by the misuse of the money he had just received. Josh was convinced that the man would waste it on alcohol instead of food and other necessities. To get it all on tape, Josh decided to make a video following the homeless man as he went about his shopping. That way, his mother would never be able to argue with him again, and he would be right. That was all that mattered to him. As he waited hidden in his car, Josh called his mother to tell her how things were going and what he planned to do. "I hope you're wrong, honey. I really wish you would learn something from all of this and become a better person. I know you are, but you lack empathy, honey," was the response Josh got from telling his mother everything. It wasn't what he expected to hear, but what happened next he didn't expect either, and it made everything he thought stop making sense. After waiting more than 2 hours, Josh saw the homeless man walking toward a small neighborhood grocery store. He decided to get out of the car and follow him on foot while recording everything with his cell phone. "Here we go. Now I'll find out the whole truth," he said to himself as he got out of the car, excited to see what was going to happen. However, what Josh ended up recording was not what he expected. What he captured with his cell phone camera was one of the most endearing and genuine moments he had ever seen in his life. He wanted to uncover the hidden truth of the homeless, and so he did, but in a totally different way than he had planned. Instead of recording the shame test, Josh contemplated what would become the only test of the truth. The panhandler went into a grocery store, the kind that sells all sorts of things, but mostly food and alcohol at a good price, and came out with a bag full of stuff. He then walked several blocks to a large park where other beggars were camped out. They were freezing to death, and you could tell they hadn't had anything decent to eat or drink in a while. When he arrived, everyone seemed to know the man and greeted him with affection and a smile. "Hi Tom, how are you? Have you been able to eat anything that wasn't too stale? Last week I was lucky and I was able to eat a pack of yogurt that was expired from the day before. Delicious. People don't know. They have it and throw it away," said a short woman who barely had any teeth and whose hands were shaking from the cold. "Welcome, Tommy. How was your day? Has the city been generous this time?" said another as he shook his hand. He was an older man, about 70 years old and very pale and thin. Nevertheless, he stood up to greet the man and gave him the best of his smiles. Josh couldn't believe what he was seeing, but what he would see next would leave him even more excited. The homeless man, whose name was Tom, opened the bag and began to distribute all the food and supplies he had bought at the store to all those people in need. The man surprised Josh and proved him wrong by spending the money to selflessly help other people as needy as he was. Tom bought no alcohol, no tobacco, not even a measly pack of gum. Everything Josh gave him, he invested in feeding others, instead of buying enough food for himself to not go hungry for weeks. Josh was really impressed and wanted to apologize to the man and explain what he had really been doing. When the man finished handing it all out, Josh approached him and confessed that he had been recording and following him ever since he handed him the money to see what he was doing with it. Also, he was very embarrassed and admitted that he thought he had spent all the money on booze or tobacco, but realizing his mistake, he only wanted to give him another $100 so he could continue helping people. Tom was very grateful that Josh explained the truth, thanked him for the gesture, and told him that he didn't need to give him any more money. Josh asked him about his story and wanted to find out what were the reasons that led him to live in those conditions. Tom explained it all to him with no trouble at all. He was a lovely man. People like me don't need a lot of money, you know? In the end, all we want is the company of other people who understand us. A good conversation while we struggle not to freeze to death is more valuable to us than all the money in the world. The real wealth is people. We can give each other everything we need to be happy. We don't need much to live except love and good company, Tom explained kindly when Josh wanted to give him more money. He then explained his story in detail, and Josh was shocked to hear it. Tom was living with his parents when his stepfather was diagnosed with terminal cancer. The bills piled up and insurance only covered part of it, so he quit his job so he could take care of them. However, his stepfather passed away sooner than expected, and 2 weeks later, her mother. Soon after, the building they lived in was sold, and he was forced to live on the street. After hearing this, Josh felt deeply ashamed. Tom hadn't been looking at living on the street. He had had the worst of luck. Tom's story is a true tragedy. When Josh realized his mistake and how wrong he had been his whole life, he wanted to redeem himself and looked for a way to help Tom and the other homeless people without having to offer them his money. He and his mother made a Facebook account where they shared the video Josh shot and explained everything that had happened. Even Josh explained that he had always thought that the homeless were people who did not deserve charity, and that if they lived that way, it was because they had brought it on themselves. He confessed to being wrong and never stopped creating content with the mission of making the rest of society aware of the mistake we make by ignoring them. Currently, Josh and his mother collaborate with soup kitchens and shelters so that people living on the streets like Tom do not go cold or hungry and have access to basic hygiene products and clean clothes throughout the year. Their work is famous on the internet, and they have already accumulated more than 100,000 followers who, like them, have joined the cause and actively collaborate as volunteers to ensure that those who have been left with nothing do not feel forgotten and can live in a dignified way. This story is proof that people should never be judged by how they look or feel, or by how they act. What happened to Tom could one day happen to us. One never knows what will happen tomorrow, so we must remain humble and not prejudge others lightly. Watching this story is the best reminder. Did you like this touching and surprising story? If so, we invite you to leave us a comment expressing your opinion. If you want to continue enjoying inspiring stories like this one, subscribe to our channel or check out our other videos shown at the bottom of the screen. Thank you for your cooperation.